6.5%, was it? Is that what the current odds are of the Stanley Cup?
Well, and if you look at the round-by-round progression, the Stanley Cup favorite is the Vancouver Canucks.
Like, what a time to be alive!
Talking you through every goalie controversy, scoring slump, and draft lottery bust, this is the C4 Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com. Here they are, the best starting lineup we could afford under the salary cap. Chris, Matt, Anna, and Adam.
Welcome to another episode of the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast, brought to you by CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network. I am Chris at Lightforce, joined virtually by Anna Forsyth at A4603, Matt Lee at MattLee_61, and Adam Olvenel Carter at Adam FOC. He is fit for the first podcast of 2021. Welcome, y'all. Happy New Year.
Hey, guys.
Hello.
It's a New Year's 2021 miracle that Adam has graced us with his beautiful presence.
I do what I can, Matt.
Well, you know what, Adam? Even Michael Furlan showed up for a couple playoff games last year before he disappeared altogether.
Was it a couple? Or was it like one period?
Was it just the one?
I think it was a couple periods.
I think it was
like he played the Winnipeg game, the warm-up.
The exhibition game? Did he?
Mm-hmm. Didn't he?
I don't know if he did, to be honest with you.
It's so long ago.
It's
I remember
funny,
you and
like
Levy played it. That's what I remember.
It's funny. That was one of the more recent games, obviously, but like I have totally wiped away my memory of that meaningless exhibition game. All I know is that the Canucks lost and they got shut out.
Yeah, but that was, it seems like a different time.
Here's Adam, passing things through doors and whatnot. I was actually thinking of that game recently and do recall it being a very boring affair.
Mm-hmm.
And it has me glad that we're not seeing preseason hockey this time around. Arguably, though, you might suggest that the first two games will be the preseason.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that. Like, I kind of always liked looking forward to preseason games just because it gives you a chance to like get a look at if there were a preseason here, like we'd see Niels Hoglander in a top six rehearsal role right away, and we're not going to be able to see that unless the Canucks decide to go with him in game one. So I always like that ability to sort of gauge and assess some players who are on that bubble. I realized that the quality of the hockey is not that great, but I also looked at it as that celebration of like hockey's back. So that's why I never took a negative attitude towards preseason hockey.
Well, but see, I think like there's different types of preseason. Like the preseason hockey you describe, I actually enjoy that when you have players that are fighting for opportunity to make the team. Mm-hmm. Some of those earlier games can be quite competitive, even though the quality of play is a little bit less. What I struggled with that Vancouver Winnipeg game is that you could tell the Canucks were simply using it as like a scrimmage, like maybe get their legs under them. We didn't see anything, like no one was fighting for a spot in a roster. Like there, that intensity didn't exist. And I think that's why I was left like, The real hockey started when
bubble hockey was weird. So like,
yeah, nothing about that was normal. So.
Yeah.
Anywho, we are going to be talking about, an NHL season that starts only 9 days from now? Is it
8 if you're listening to this podcast today
when it comes out?
Yeah. And training camp for the Vancouver Canucks only kicked off this week. For the teams that weren't in the bubble, it kicked off on New Year's Eve, which again is still kind of weird, but whatever. We'll be talking a little bit about what's going on there in the world of the Vancouver Canucks. They added a player is a PTO an actual contract, or is it simply a piece of paper that says you can show up and we won't kick you out? We're going to talk about that. There's World Junior going on. Apparently Team Canada is a good group of hockey players. I've heard rumors. And I don't know. We'll probably find other things to talk about because it's us here at C4.
Michael Furlan going possibly on LTIR as well.
Well, I mean, okay, that was a given. Here I am trying to do a nice like segue, and Josh Green here jumps in.
Yeah,
and
you
says,
talked
hey,
over the link. God.
Well,
Just
Seahawks
hold your
Hockey
horses now.
Podcast.
We'll get to it.
From CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network. It's like we've been off for like months. Or is it because Adam's shown up and you're all flustered, Matt?
I'm back.
Like,
The whole chemistry, the whole rhythm you guys have built is gone. I'm sorry.
Look,
It's just you're
Matt,
excited.
Matt can blame me. It's all good.
Okay.
I mean, look, when top 6 players return from injuries, it takes a little bit to get back in the groove. There's rebuilding that chemistry. So I'm sure that the Brock Besser to my PD will be back in no time.
That might be the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
Could have been Sven Berchi to your Horvat.
God, I remember when Adam and I talked about how Berchi and Horvat would be a thing for like the next 5 years, and we thought that was that was a real second line.
They had that, after the trade for him. They looked pretty good together. Here we are.
Okay,
So what do we want to talk about first?
They're still
Let's talk
looking
about World
for a
Juniors
winger,
first.
so let's do that.
Let's talk about World Juniors first. So I didn't actually see the Canada-Russia game. I only saw the box score. I noticed that Canada won 5-0. Canada just rolling here. And maybe for those who've seen the game, give me some of your quick hitting thoughts of what you saw.
Yeah, I caught most of it from like midway through the first period onwards. I think it was already 3-0 at that point, but like Canada, they're just a dominant team this year. I don't think they have like the true superstar that they've had in years past when they've had like Tavares or McDavid or anything like that. But like Dylan Cousins has been unbelievable, and Bowen Byram and Jamie Drysdale are maybe the best defense pair Canada's ever had. They're just so freaking good. And then when you think about a team like Colorado getting a Bowen Byram and an Alex Newhook who came back and sniped a goal today, it just seems unfair. They're so deep. Devin Levi's been awesome. They're a great team. I'm sad that the Canucks don't have anybody on them to cheer. They dominated today. I think the fact that they were up 4-0 pretty early on in the second period kind of affected the shots in that Russia had a lot more from then on. It was like 22-8 at one point for Canada.
Mm-hmm.
They were awesome. I don't know. There's not much more to say about it than that. Podkolzin did get player of the game for Russia, but
Podkolzin was threatening to take his team out to the back room and smack him around or something like that at one point. Like he was livid during a stoppage in play. But there was a moment in the second period where it almost occurred to me that, like, I don't know if it was that the Russian players weren't sort of up to the pace that Canada was providing, or if they had simply given up. Like 3-0 deficits are obviously not good in semifinal games to face, but there was absolutely no spark. Pod seemed to have some, but that was it. And then to have that power play goal taken away from them, that one little spark that they had on
the offside rule has got to be the worst rule in hockey, and the fact that you can review it and everything. It's so bad. And, I don't think that goal would have changed the outcome of the game, but, we've seen crazier things happen with Canada and Russia.
It would have been 3-1 at that point, wouldn't it have?
4-1.
I'm trying to remember this. 4-1, okay. I mean, it would have at least made things interesting for a short period of time, because we have seen previous Canadian teams suddenly fall apart quickly.
I mean, it doesn't look like this one does. But yeah.
No, but yeah, you could tell the moment that goal was disallowed, it's like, okay, well, let's just finish this game.
Yeah.
Move on.
The Russian goalie had a weird day. 2 of the 4 goals, he had lost his stick on. He's lost his stick like 5 or 6 times in this tournament. I don't know what's going on there, but just kind of a weird tournament for a great young goalie.
Well, I noticed Mike McKenna, Canucks legend Mike McKenna, he had actually commented when Askarov lost his stick and the defenseman had given to him, and he's like, "The stick needs absolutely nothing. The pads do all the work. The stick's better off in the defenseman's hand instead of it being the wrong stick in the hand of your goaltender, which doesn't actually improve anything. You've now taken away one of your players' best abilities to deal with things."
I've always thought that when like goalies get handed like defenseman's stick or whatever, what are you supposed to do with that? Like nothing. Like you can't do anything with that. They're way better to act with their hands, I would think.
I have asked goalie friends about that before, and I'm told that like you need to have something in your hand because it throws off like your balance, if you will. Like goalies are used to holding like something in their hand in that position, and to not have something, it does like kind of affect how they sort their mechanics, if you will. So it's better for them to have something in their hand just to maintain that goalie mechanics than to not have something at all.
Well, and that's been my understanding as well. But then today, like McKenna mentions, Marty Biron was another. There were a number of goaltenders who clearly pointed out that putting the stick in his hands, if he needs the stick that badly, there are bigger problems. And I sort of see the logic. Like if you take the stick out of the hands of a defenseman or a forward, I mean, usually it's the defenseman that's closest, you're now really putting yourself at a worse disadvantage. You have two players that now have to change their game, all because of a piece of, I guess, composite now in the hand of a goaltender. And it's, the way goaltenders are these days, I mean, everything is built around angles, systems, mechanics. So I guess losing the stick, if it breaks your mechanics, okay, I can see that. But I've never been a goaltender, though.
Yeah. All this to say, Canada, I was going to say, just Canada's very good. Russia was pretty good in this tournament. I thought Podkolzin, on the whole, a lot of hand-wringing about him, but I thought he looked pretty good all tournament. He was creating chances, setting up his teammates. He was a workhorse. Like whether or not the points come with him, like there's just no chance of him being a bad player in the NHL, I think. That's my takeaway. And you know what? Like you can't take too much away from a single tournament, but that's how I feel about him exiting this tournament.
Yeah, I think
I was just quickly going to say that.
Okay. No, you
Sorry.
go, Matt.
Go ahead, Anna.
Okay, fine. Yeah, like such a small sample size, such a weird setup, like compared to a normal year of World Juniors. But I think you just have to take away style of play and the way Podkolzin plays, and I think you could see how much he thinks the game and whether or not his teammates are quite up there with him all the time. Yeah, it doesn't seem like they are, but yeah, it's very encouraging, I think, from the way he plays and creates chances, like as a playmaking role.
I think you guys have summarized Podkolzin pretty accurately, so I don't need to weigh in more. But just to speak to Adam's talking about how good Canada is, I don't have the exact stat, but like they must have something like 15 to 16 first rounders on their team, which seems unusually high compared to other years. And this is like them not even having Lafreniere available for them. So it seems like quite clearly that when it's all said and done, this Canadian team will go down as one of the more dominant ones of the last decade, if in fact when they win the gold medal.
I think statistically right now they are, in terms of like goal differential and goals put up and stuff like that. Yeah, and I think, going back to the depth, I think every single one of their forwards is a first rounder. I might be mistaken about that, but I'm pretty sure Ferraro said that on one of the broadcasts, which is just insane. Yeah, and like who knows if they could beat the 2015 team with McDavid or the 2003 lockout team, but they're definitely up there in terms of, so far at least, best Canadian teams I've seen up to this point.
They showed a statistic during the broadcast as well as to since 2010 the number of medals, and Russia has the most, which could potentially change after this year. But Canada seems to either go for gold or not much else. Like of the number of medals, the majority are gold, but it's not as bad as the Finns. The Finns have 3 medals, 3 gold. So if Finland is good, they're great. If they're not great, then peace be with them. Anyhow.
Yeah. Sorry, the last thing I will say, like the only team that I think really stands in the way for Canada is that United States team. And if that United States team can play up to their potential, I think they do have the horses that can keep up with Canada. Now that Russia's gone and Sweden's been upset as well, I could be completely wrong on this, but I just don't think Finland, for example, can match either the U.S. team or the Canadian team. So I think it'd be great to see Canada-U.S. final. I'm not sure if that's possible or not.
Well, at this point, it's U.S.-Finland.
Yeah.
Right. So it is very possible to see a Canada-U.S. final. And that's what I was actually going to ask. Is that who we all see Canada facing?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, Adam might know this better than I do, but I can't remember the last time Canada played against the U.S. in the gold medal game, except for that one year when John Carlson, I believe, scored the overtime winner in something like 2009, if I'm not mistaken.
I think that was 2010, I believe.
It might be 2009 or 2010.
2009 was when Everly scored to tie it against Russia.
Yeah, and then the year after was the
year after
Canada
that he scored twice against the States. To tie it up, and then they lost with the Carlson. Yeah, so that was the last time they played. But they played so many like New Year's Eve classics.
Yeah, but that a Canada-U.S. gold medal game is going to be like one of those games to remember. I think.
To your point, Matt, I think the States have the best player in the tournament in. Guy who was so close to being a Canuck in Trevor Zegras. It'll be a hell of a game if it happens. Right now it's 1-1 midway through the second, if anybody's curious. So we'll see how that plays out.
Do you want to talk about this like super, super quick? Like I know that there's been a lot of conjecture maybe on Canucks Twitter about how close the Canucks were to getting Trevor Zegras compared to Vasily Podkolzin, but I'm still very happy with Vasily Podkolzin. You guys have talked a lot about the merits of Podkolzin's game, and I feel like as great of an upside that Trevor Zegras has, he wouldn't have fit this younger group better than I think Podkolzin will, stylistically speaking.
I think that's entirely possible. A rugged winger who can play at both ends of the ice and set up his teammates could fit better than a flashier kind of skill guy when the Canucks have a lot of that up front already. But, speaking to who's a better player, it's too early to say. And, would you rather have the guy who is more likely to be a guy who puts up 60 plus points a year, or a guy who is just for sure going to be a player for a long time?
Mm-hmm.
So.
I mean, I wouldn't complain getting Trevor Zegras though. Like, you just make the space, don't you? With a player like that, that's what I would say. Agreed.
So I think we'll take a quick break here. You're listening to the C4 Canucks Hockey Podcast on CanucksHockeyBlog.com and the Full Press Coverage Network.
Support for the following passion comes from Lexus, celebrating the obsessions that drive us to go all in. From enthusiasts of all different spaces.
My name is Ashley Yee. I am from Los Angeles, California, and I am a foodie. To me, food isn't simply stuff people eat when they're hungry. It's inventive, it's delicious, and I love how food is sort of a catalyst that brings people together.
Ashley started posting food photography on social media during college, pioneering the food blogging space by just being herself.
Creating something that's interesting, beautiful, and quirky, I think that's what sets you apart. I think as soon as you are going to be yourself unapologetically, that's when people will really resonate with you.
And she believes passion is the key to success.
Passion creates excitement. I think it's a fuel that really inspires and drives people to their goals.
At Lexus, they've gone all in on their passion, designing a pure sports sedan, the new Lexus IS. Designed to look as thrilling as it is to drive. Learn more at lexus.com/IS.
Support for this podcast comes from Progressive. What would you do with an extra $800? Buy a plane ticket? Pay down your student loan? Treat yourself to those shoes you've been eyeing. With Progressive, you could find out. Drivers who switch and save an average of $796 on car insurance. Get your quote online at Progressive.com and see how much you could be saving. National average annual car insurance savings by new customers surveyed who saved with Progressive in 2019.
Take hitting out of the game. You can't hit anymore, so don't do it.
The unsportsmanlike conduct, I want to get an explanation on it.
No kidding.
Because how do you get suspended for unsportsmanlike conduct?
Plus interference. There's no interference there. He had the puck.
Now, Madison never ever did that before. Now, why did he do it? And that because he was mad.
Well, your early favorite for the Calder Trophy, that's for sure. Elias Pettersson, you might even say your early favorite for the Hart Trophy.
Just to get back to your question, Elias is going to play plenty. He's going to get a lot of power play time. And, yeah, I'm concerned about our offense. We lost 200-point players, and we've got to find a way to score.
So the Vancouver Canucks kicked off training camp today, or for those listening, tomorrow and beyond, earlier this week, and I don't recall hearing about anyone puking.
Well, no, Troy Stecher has left, so unfortunately that took away your number one vomit candidate.
No one else
rails.
tries as hard as Troy does.
Yeah, Troy drove across the country to get to Detroit.
Oh, that must have been a drive.
Oh man, and driving with Detroit as the destination too.
Yeah.
Well, he had his dog, so that might have played into the reason why he drove. But I had read that and I'm like, my goodness, that's a commute and a half this time of year, especially with the weather as it is
in December.
Mm-hmm.
So my question to you guys is, would you rather have the commute that Troy Stecher had or the one that the Gaudette family had on their way back to Vancouver?
Oh, yeah.
So you take the convenience of being in charge of your own driving ability, your destination to drive towards Detroit. It's a longer trip, or you can have the debacle that the Gaudettes had coming back from Massachusetts towards Vancouver with the layovers and the lost baggage and the leak and stuff like that.
Yeah,
if you had to pick one of those two,
I think I'd rather end up in Vancouver, but with a leak, I don't know. Maybe there's not much difference.
You think about the convenience of the travel, the time, is definitely speaks loudly. But of all the stress that you go through and then to arrive where you've got no power, you've got a leak that's been significant in nature that you need remediation, like all of that additional stress. Like how stressed was Stecher driving on the highway? Probably, a little bit through the Rockies. Because I don't know what route he would have taken, but I'm going to think he goes across Canada before he shoots down to the U.S. Right? So once you get through the Rockies, should be pretty, smooth driving, so to speak. So I don't know. I think I go with what Stetch does, because at the end of the day, worst comes to worst, you just pull into a motel somewhere. It's not like you have to worry about getting a room; they're all empty. Anyhow, but yeah, training camp kicked off. We got to see a first inkling of what some of the potential lineups would be. To see. Okay, is it me, or are people getting excited over day one of a camp? And maybe overdoing it a little. I understand that we're all happy that hockey's back, but we're seeing potential line combinations on the first day of camp.
Chris,
that's
are you
just
new here?
Oh, we've split players up. I know. I'm looking at Canucks Twitter and expecting reason and sanity, but
I personally feel that it's a little bit of both. I think people have gone without hockey in Vancouver for roughly about 3 months now, 3 full months anyway. And there's obviously a lot of high excitement in terms of the possibilities with line combination, whether it be Nils Hoglander competing for a top 6 spot, or maybe it's Jake Virtanen's role. The buzz about Travis Hamonic possibly coming into camp after a 7-day quarantine. So I think there's a lot of people who are reading into what they saw on day one here with these line combinations and trying their best stab at what they think will be the opening night roster.
Okay, sure. But I mean, Hoglander, for instance, I'll actually use it as an example. Good to see the kid get an opportunity playing next to Horvat and Pearson. Is that going to be his spot, though?
I mean, I'll let Adam and Anna speak as well, but I'll just simply say that I think Travis Green is going to give Nils Hoglander every opportunity to establish some chemistry with Tanner Pearson and Bo Horvat in this training camp. That said, I think this is also maybe a shot across the bow from Travis Green to Jake Virtanen, who has long been a Travis Green whipping boy in terms of dangling that carrot in front of Jake. We all know the opportunity that Jake Virtanen has. Everyone thought that this was going to be Jake Virtanen's spot to lose in the top 6. I mean, if you attended the holiday show a couple weeks ago, you would have heard everyone who thinks that Jake Virtanen would be on the second line. So I think this is going to be a bit of a battle where Travis Green will make Jake Virtanen earn every bit of top 6 time he can get.
Yeah, Matt, I think that's pretty aptly put. I think that's a huge part of it. And also, Travis Green's a good coach. He's a smart guy. I think he looks at his team and sees a dearth of high-end skill beyond the guys we always talk about, right? So especially when it comes to second and third line wingers. So why not take an extended look and see what this guy who oozes skill can do with other high-end forwards? I think when you're just trying to find something that works, then throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. And if it does, great. If it lights a fire under Jake's ass, also great. But yeah, go ahead, man.
Great use of dearth. Anna, over to you.
Very supportive interjection, Matt. Yeah, I think kind of what we said already, but just because Jake has a good opportunity to cement a spot on the second line doesn't mean he's going to get given it. And Hoglander's the biggest unknown there. Like, Travis Green does know what kind of player Jake is, and as much as he'll give Jake some time to show what he can do, we want to see what Hoglander can do too. And if he's ready, he's ready. I don't see it if I had to predict now, I'm not going to say that Hoglander gets that spot on the second line. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to see what Hoglander can do. Yeah, I think Jake has still got a lot to prove here. So, he tried out with PD today. He spent some time working with PD as well. He's going to, Travis is pushing him, and, PD's a great person to push Jake.
Well, I was going to say, how is that any different than past seasons? Really, the only year or camp that Jake has shown up to where he has not been the quote-unquote whipping boy was his first camp, when arguably there are those that suggest Virtanen and McCann were locks on a lineup because the powers that be wanted the good story of the kids and the good, the local boy, does right by his hometown team. I just kind of look at Jake Virtanen, and I'll use Hoglander as an example, and consider, are there more people that want to see Hoglander succeed because of how amped up he happens to be within the market? And conversely, is this just undue pressure on someone like Jake Virtanen, who I don't think it should be any surprise to anyone needs to have a good camp to prove that he belongs in that spot in the roster? Or is he going to find himself down into the doghouse and the doldrums of the third or quote-unquote fourth line?
Yeah, I can't speak to the physical condition Jake arrived to camp in. That has always been the bugaboo with Jake Virtanen seemingly every training camp is how does he look physically? But it seems to be a rite of passage that Travis Green is always going to give Jake Virtanen that tough love. And as I said before, I really think that this is Travis Green sending a shot across the bow to Jake Virtanen with having Hoglander in the top 6, that there's pressure on Jake, and that there's always going to be pressure on Jake Virtanen to perform. And no matter what Jake does, no matter how good he looks, there will never not be pressure on Jake Virtanen, because that's the only way that Travis Green can get close to unlocking the potential of Jake Virtanen. I think all of us think that there is some potential with Jake Virtanen. Whether or not he has the mental wherewithal to unlock that potential seems to be the big question with him.
Yeah, sorry to just jump in, and I know I'm just going to quickly say on Jake, and I know that some of our listeners won't like this, but like Jake isn't a whipping boy. He showed up to 2 camps in 1 season, like out of shape. That's not good. Like, so the difference for this year is that there's an open spot that he can earn. Like, that's the biggest opportunity he has. And it does seem like he's had a good off season in terms of conditioning. But whether that's enough for Travis to like trust him with a spot, that's the difference.
Well, to use sort of that point as a segue, you're right. Jake has had camps previous where he arguably approached it like the 80s and 70s players used to. That's the training camp was what you use to get in shape for the regular season. Whereas in today's NHL, you show up in shape. The question was asked, I think it was Kuzma that had essentially asked him straight up as to his conditioning. And we saw him not quite like the question. And then obviously we had the side eye and sass from PD within that same conference as a result. But I kind of look at Jake and getting that question as one, he should not be surprised that media are asking the question. And they're out there to say Vancouver media are a special breed unto themselves, but media will ask that question. But you got to go and understand it's going to come. And you throw back, you're prepared with an answer. Here's what I've done. I've done this, 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 and this. Next question. Like to sort of play it down like, oh, I can't believe you asked it. That's, for me, is somewhat problematic because that shows me that bothers him.
Yeah, we have a thing in the communications industry that you stick to your key messages. And I'm not sure who's been feeding Jake the messages here, but I think there's plenty of positives that he could have been talking about in his media availability. And it's that he was spending almost the entire offseason training with Tyler Myers, new dad Tyler Myers. So you'd like to think that Jake Virtanen was, standing up and flying right over the offseason. So again, I don't know what Jake Virtanen's physical shape looked like, but I think the way that both he and Pettersson were giving some of those answers about Jake Virtanen's physical condition was only adding fuel to the media's fire because, Jake Virtanen has put himself in this position sometimes by showing up to camps out of shape before. And so he had an opportunity to say, you know what, I'm in pretty good shape. And I think by not doing that, that gives even more fuel to the fire.
Well, and
he did say the same thing over and over again. Go ahead, Chris.
Well, I was going to say, imagine sort of a Kevin Bieksa response. Like Kevin Bieksa, granted, experience here and some wisdom that Jake has not yet achieved just simply because of age. But I think Bieksa goes and responds to that in a completely different fashion. He goes through, he gives you the positive answer. And if he's going to throw sass, he's going to actually do it in such a way that it's almost a joke. Like, oh, yeah, no, I'm this. In fact, Hank and Danny, they look to me now to see what they need to do because they've fallen behind. There's so many ways that I think Jake could have handled that question because what has now occurred is it's become an issue. And then there are going to be those, the media are making it more of an issue. I saw someone I can't believe Vancouver media are so negative. Imagine if they were positive. The job of media is not to be either negative nor positive. They're simply to ask questions, get answers, communicate to those, and maybe in an op-ed of some sort, provide their 2 cents. Whereas podcasters are probably the closest thing that you're going to get to being too positive, and I don't think us at C4 have ever been accused of that. But this is a story. It is going to continue to remain a story until it's either dealt with because Jake shows up and oh my God, look at it. Look at him. He's fit. He's fast. He essentially counters all of those points that continue to get raised or doesn't continue to move next question, move on. The torts response is not the approach to take here.
Yeah, I agree.
I'll jump in real quick and I'll let Adam talk because he's just been sitting back seats. So sorry about that. But Jake is just not that kind of smart. I'm not saying he's dumb, but if you look at the difference between how Jake and PD answer questions, it's so different. Just I would love to have Matt jump in there with Jake and give him a few pointers because he said the same thing over and over. He didn't answer the question, and whatever the question was, he would direct it back onto the same thing of just giving those cliche answers. Whereas, PD, by contrast, cut media down, responded back very quickly and witty. It's just a huge difference, and just not everyone's great with the media, and Jake is one of those people.
Well, I don't know if Jake doing the PD approach would work there. Just on that note, I think Jake would need to be.
No, I agree.
That's why I used the BX example. Yeah. Anyway, Adam, sorry, you're so patient.
Oh, I'm going to say, no, that's okay. I just don't care. I don't know. Maybe this is the fantasy football fan in me. Just all training camp tropes. Just I ignore everything that is said at these podium things. I wait to see, I showed up in the best shape of my life. Okay, people say that every year. If you are out of shape, then you're out of shape. So for me, it's show up on the ice. I don't really care how you answer a question. It's a pain that it does get talked about so, intensely in Vancouver, but it's just show up on the ice. If you want to be snide, then be snide, but just show up and work out and do what you got to do. Like Travis said, Jake's going to earn his spot. It's up to Jake where he ends up playing. It's if he's going to work hard and put in the effort to be a top 6 player, then that's great. And if he wants to, dick around about it, then so be it. But if he produces, then that's all that I really care about at this point, with especially Jake Virtanen.
Yeah, I was just going to say I completely agree with Adam in that every year it always seems like player X and player Y are always showing up into training camps in the best shape of their lives, and it none of that matters until you actually play the games on the ice. So I think media are looking to glean whatever they can from the first day of availability, but in the end, they're all just things that are selling athletic subscriptions and selling post-media newspapers. So I think the players know that as well, and that's probably why we got the reactions that we did from some of them.
Yeah.
That said, I'm curious as to you guys, do you feel that Nils Höglander starts opening night, in the top 6, or rather at least in the lineup?
After one day, I'm sorry, no. I don't.
No?
Well, no, after one day, no, I don't. Just as we were just hearing sort of Jake needs to earn a spot. Mm-hmm. What has Höglander done to earn a starting lineup opportunity?
That's the thing.
He showed up to camp?
He didn't look out of place. I'll say that. But again, it's been one day. It's been an afternoon, couple hours. So
he did look like one of the fittest players on the ice, during the bag skate. He led his group, which is nothing. Mm-hmm. Which is not nothing.
Yeah, and I will say...
I fully acknowledge... Sorry, go ahead, Anna.
Just quickly say that fitness will count for more this season because of the strange setup we're going to have and all the travel and, the condensed season. So I will say it does count for more this year than other years. But go ahead.
I was just going to say, I fully acknowledge that it has been one day of camp and Nils Höglander hasn't done anything to take a spot away from Jake Virtanen. But I think friend of the show, Cam Robinson, made a really good point this morning on Twitter when he mentioned the advantage that Nils Höglander has over every one of these other players that are in camp. He's in the freshest, he's been playing games. He's been in Europe playing games. He's got a full head start over these players who have not played in any meaningful games for the past 3 to 4 months. We've talked the last 10 minutes about how Jake Virtanen may or may not be coming into training camp in shape. There is every possibility, I think, that at least in game 1, opening night, Nils Höglander might be starting on the second line just because Travis Green wants Jake Virtanen to work himself back into shape. Like you guys mentioned, it's a compressed season where there's going to be a lot of back-to-backs. It will not surprise me much to see Nils Höglander get in 20-plus games this season if things break right for him.
Well, okay, getting into the games during the season, if you were to ask that question, I'd say, I think based on what little we've seen, more than likely for a variety of reasons. But to simply be in the starting lineup, I do agree with what Adam had said. Fitness matters, and and I know you had mentioned along the same lines. But then I also look at this simply being camp alone. There are no real games for you to lose your spot to someone else in comparison based on how they compete. Everything is about camp. And I feel that we're not going to see the same lineup game 1 come, let's say, game 5. Mm-hmm. That's where I think we'll start to see the changes happen early on, more so than we would have seen in any other regular season. But no, fitness would have to be a significant issue for a Hoglander to come in for another player, or potentially an injury. On one final note, I know nothing of the sort, but I kind of think Jake Virtanen has probably shown up to camp in great shape, which matters very little to, I know, many people. But imagine if he didn't. Like, that just speaks to a bigger problem.
Yeah.
Yeah. And sorry.
Yeah, I mean, alarm bells would be ringing for me if Jake Virtanen showed up to a third straight camp in out of shape. At that point, I'd be pretty close to just cutting Jake Virtanen completely rather than trying to trade him.
Before we move on, I just want to go back to one thing, Chris, you said about Hoglander and like what has he done so far to earn a roster spot. I think you could ask the question, what the hell have half the bottom 6 players done to keep a roster spot for the past little bit, you know? So, like, if I think shows out in camp, then, you know, why not give him a try over a guy like Louis Eriksson, who has such minimal upside? So
maybe this is because I'm jaded. I've actually come to accept that there are questions that we ask that we'll never understand the answers to, as to, like, yeah, you know, Louis Eriksson taking the place of a Hoglander, and like maybe, and that's the jaded part of me. I've just become so used to Jags over. I mean, heck, when was it? Was it 2 years ago, or whatever, where the Canucks are out of it and they're still fighting to win games instead of rotating black aces in? Like, there are things that we as fans will never truly understand. So I agree with you there, Adam. You're right. I think Hoglander deserves a spot over others.
Anyway, should we move on towards talking about Michael Ferland / Travis Hamonic?
Yeah, so just on the Ferland note, he is not in camp. He is still dealing with injuries. And this was a conversation that was somewhat, emotional in Gate 16 and C4 Discord as to, who can tell a player that they should not play. What I found interesting is there was a quote from Ferland. He had said he has, like, his wife, his family are telling him what he should do. And it seemed to be along the lines that, we would prefer maybe not go back, but the choice remains yours. If your family is saying something along those lines, at the end of the day, it's his choice, and I would never imagine telling a professional of any sort, you can't do what you do anymore, time to hang it up. But their opinion should weigh very heavily on them. And Anna, you mentioned a very salient point in C4 Discord. NHL culture is a big problem here. Like, the fact that
I'd say it's one of
okay
the
to
most
sort of
problematic.
Yeah, there is more than hockey.
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, we have quite a few examples in Canucks history. We have Derek Dorsett, who, gave up his career because it was going to impact his long-term life with his family, and more power to him for doing that. There was Manny Malhotra, who didn't want to give up his career until Canucks said it's not safe to put you out on the ice. And neither of those were like head injuries, which I think carries an extra weight of, one, we don't know enough about it. Like, there's still so many studies going in. Actually, right now in the UK, there's been 2 rugby players who've been diagnosed with early onset dementia and probable CTE in the last couple months. And it's just such a huge and delicate issue. And although obviously the choices remain with the player, there's just a larger issue, as I've kind of pointed out before, with the culture of playing through injury and the kind of macho BS that comes with that.
So, just by straw poll, is there anyone here that thinks Ferland suits up the Vancouver Canucks this season? Yeah, we're all shaking heads. So
yeah, I mean, I would be absolutely shocked if Michael Ferland plays a game for the Vancouver Canucks this season. I've seen some rumblings, even from his own agent, John Davidson, who I think appeared either on 650 or 1040 this morning forgive me for not knowing which one, but even his agent, who's, always been a staunch supporter of Michael Furlan and his career, seemed to relent a little bit that it would be very surprising if Michael Furlan played this season. So I think that really sends everything that you need to know about Michael Furlan's status. So, and the fact that the Canucks are even bringing Hamonic on a PTO and it sounds like a deal is all but done certainly seems to indicate that the expectation is Furlan will be placed on LTIR. It's not a matter of if, but more a matter of when. I think it's also kind of, to be honest with you, a good thing for Furlan to maybe sit out this entire season because it's a compressed schedule. Like, who wants to come back if you're Michael Furlan anyway to a season where it's a compressed schedule during the middle of a pandemic? So I think for Michael Furlan's well-being, it's a good time for him to actually take the time needed to get right, not rush back, and sort of reevaluate himself after the season is over.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, considering the compressed schedule where you also play the same team, 3 nights in a row, if there's something that we know about the NHL is that the more teams play each other, the more animosity tends to exist within the game. And based on the role that Furlan has been expected to play over his career, is that the type of situation that he would want to get himself placed in? Like, to me, the risk then becomes much more extreme than if we were to go and sort of see the cooler heads prevail over more normal seasons with a diversity of opponent. But Hamonic, also apparently known as Harmonic to many people in the Twitter sphere.
I think that's autocorrect.
Okay. So there's the comparison of is he the replacement to Stetcher? I would have preferred to have kept Stetcher, but hey, that ship sailed. So I have no problems if Hamonic ends up being the Stetcher fill-in.
I was going to say that I think Hamonic is actually the Tanev fill-in, if anything, if you're talking about stylistically. Both right-side defensemen can play the penalty kill and block shots. So if anything, I think Hamonic actually replaces Tanev. Now, okay,
so then that, in my mind, that answer alone elevates the Canucks blue line. That he essentially, the net result is a better blue line than the Canucks had last year.
Okay, so this is the big question, I think, is the Canucks blue line where you subtract Tanev and Stetcher and add Hamonic and Schmidt, is the blue line better?
Hamonic did have the worst season of his career last year. I think it's worth saying that, or at least like the biggest step down, maybe it's still better than his rookie season, whatever. So it really does depend on if he has a bounce back season or what. I think you're right, Matt. Stylistically, he's probably more like a Tanev than a Stetcher, but I don't think he's the same quality as Tanev. Even at his peak, I think Tanev's probably a better defender. It is a good question. I really don't know the answer. I think nobody does or nobody will until we see it play out. Just which duo is better? Would you rather have the high end offensive player and the lower end defensive player, or vice versa, right? Which is what we had before. So it'll be fun to see it play out. I do think it's pretty risk-free investment in bringing in Hamonic. I think, it's not just a PTO, like you said. I think there is a deal kind of ready to go as soon as Furlan ends up on LTIR. But I don't see any downside to it. It's definitely better than whoever else. If it bumps down whoever was in the 6th position, or the 6th spot, then
Jordy Ben.
Yeah, then it's definitely better than Jordy Ben.
That's the thing. I think we're kind of starting clean slate with our defense, really, because of those two big subtractions there in Stetcher and Tanev. So I think it really is a matter of seeing who sticks together, like Edler and Schmidt playing together today. Looks like a top pairing, but we'll see. So as Adam said, it's very risk-free. He's so cheap. And yeah, I don't think it's whether it's a significant upgrade, not fully sure, but it's not a downgrade either. There's kind of the, I hate to say plus and minus, pros and cons. That's a better phrase. And yeah, there's more of an offensive upside to Hamonic than Tanev. So whether he's as good defensively, probably not. But yeah, I don't see it as a significant decrease in talent there.
I will say that although I like Travis Hamonic, and I do think that when opening night rolls around, he's going to probably end up playing with Quinn Hughes. You got to remember, there are a lot of like hard miles that are on Travis Hamonic's name. Like, this dude is a warrior, blocked shots, plays the penalty kill, not unlike the style that Chris Tanev plays. Like, just a greasy guy who's going to be able to play some hard minutes for you in a top four, more ideally in a bottom six role. Like, this guy missed, like, I think 15 plus games last year due to various injuries. And he has definitely lost a step or two since he was a New York Islander, for instance, and when the Calgary Flames traded, I believe, a first-round package for him. So the risk, as many of you have already said, is very minimal. It's a one-year deal, probably in the neighborhood of $1 million, and he's obviously coming on that secondary free agent market, so you know he's going to come in at a deal. So there's very little risk to it, but given his style of play, I'm very uncertain that he will be able to get through like an entire season without carrying that red flag of an injury.
Before we talk about some quick hits, outside of camp, is there anything else from camp you wanted to hit on?
I mean, way too soon discussion, but I'm curious to you guys, like, on the surface after day one of camp, like, what do you guys see in net? Do you see Thatcher Demko playing the majority of the games? Like, if you were to say right now, your way too soon guess about what the split will be between Demko and Holtby, what would be your prediction?
I think Holtby gets 2/3 of the games.
Wow.
Unless he, I kid you not, if Holtby plays decent hockey and we see a bounce back from what he sort of had last year, I see Holtby getting more games.
I think it'll be a 50-50-ish split to start with, like, the intention of Demko taking the reins. If one of them goes and gets on a super hot streak, maybe they ride that train, but I think it's going to start pretty even to start. And I would guess by the end of it, Demko gets more starts.
Hannah?
I mean, yeah, it is super way too soon because I think they're a long way off deciding. I think Canucks care a lot about goalie systems, and I think Holtby is still learning the system, and that'll mean that I think Demko starts the year as like having more starts. I think it'll even out over the course of the season. I think we're looking at 50-50. It will. I think it's so up in the air, but way too soon pick 50-50.
Yeah, I'm right there with you guys in the 50-50 camp. My gut tells me that Thatcher Demko plays game one, but by the end of the season, Holtby rather is going to end up playing 55% of the games to Demko's 45, with the goal of grooming Demko towards taking the majority of games next season.
Well, so I agree that Demko is the goaltender of next year. We've seen too often the Vancouver Canucks, they want to win, and if Holtby is what gives it to them, they'll commit to that sort of experience in net. Might they be looking at leveraging his play if he's playing well to showcase why it would be so important for Seattle to take him off their hands?
Yeah.
Like there's so many scenarios in this weird year that have me thinking Holtby gets more, unless Holtby doesn't perform. Again,
I do think, Chris, you make a really good point that there might be a little bit of showmanship from the Canucks to Seattle of like, this is our really great former Vezina winning goaltender who has resurrected his career with goalie guru Ian Clark and has turned back into a top flight goaltender that you just got to take. Please don't take Jake Virtanen from us. So I do think that that's part of the equation, but I think that's also a little bit of long game that I don't know if Jim Benning is capable of playing.
That's what, 3D chess.
Yeah.
Jim Benning.
Canucks schedule is out. Yeah, but he plays basic checkers. Canucks schedule's out. No real big surprises outside of when Montreal or Toronto in town on a Saturday. That's an early start. 4 p.m. for us out here on the West. From a broadcast perspective, it makes sense. You want to broadcast in the time that's convenient to your massive audience out east. It's just unfortunate when you see how much power they have, because when Ottawa comes to town, granted, there isn't a Saturday. Oh, no, there is. Ottawa doesn't have the big crowd, apparently. They have to play at 7 p.m. Vancouver time, so is what it is. It's going to be surreal watching these Canadian teams play each other over and over and over.
Yeah, it's funny. I feel like we've always had that discussion about who is Canada's team, and it's like this is the one year where maybe we get to find some answers to it. So I think it's kind of almost, as you said, Chris, surreal that we're going to see an all Canadian division.
I think that there's going to be a pretty good uniting across the country against Toronto. I just have that feeling, just because they're always the center of everything, and now it's only Canada, so it's everybody against Toronto. I put money on that.
Well, it's funny you mentioned it. I asked for hot takes on Twitter.
I was going to say, that is the coldest take from Adam. Like,
is it?
This is just it. All other Canadian teams don't like Toronto.
I know, but I just think, the rivalries between Canadian teams will be like behind everyone else's hate for Toronto. Toronto's going to screw over everybody in terms of, early start times all year long. It's not just going to be a one-time thing, right? So I just think it's going to be stronger than that. That's not
the Maple Leafs that get that. It's Rogers ultimately that gets their way.
But it's put on the Leafs, I think, pretty fairly too.
Yeah.
Related to these early start times, though, is that Jordan Bateman says Petey's going to get heart recognition simply because Eastern media is now going to be forced to watch so much of him.
That's very true. I was just going to say that I actually disagree with Adam. I think we're going to just end up hating like random teams we've never hated before. Like, I've never hated Ottawa. I just feel sorry for them and their fans. But I think we're just going to end up hating them. And we're going to hate Montreal. I don't hate Montreal right now, but I think I'm going to by the end of the season. I'm going to be sick of them.
Yeah, I think it's the Oilers for me that I'll hate more than any other team, probably. More than I already do.
Yeah, I'm with Adam. If there's one team in the Canadian division that I don't like, it's the Edmonton Oilers. Just teams that have been gifted first overall year after year. And now, even as a non-Canucks fan, it's infuriating to me that the Oilers are finding a way once again to screw up McDavid in his prime years. Come on, man. You've had years to figure this out, and you are just pissing away prime McDavid / Draisaitl years by having a completely incompetent team. Think about this for a second. The Edmonton Oilers, if I can go off on a tangent here, the Edmonton Oilers, their worst part about that team was their goaltending. Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen, I don't know how you go into the offseason thinking I bet our goaltending is not our problem. So they went out and they kicked tires to Jacob Markstrom. And then at the end of it all, they struck out on goaltending, and their solution was, let's just bring back the exact same goaltending tandem.
Run it back. Yeah.
What? How do you do this?
Jim Benning in Edmonton, is that a better team?
I don't know, man, but you see that in goaltending with Edmonton, and if I was an Oilers fan, and if that happened here in Vancouver, if the turntables were there, if the tables had turned, if the tables had turned and it was Mike Smith and Mikko Koskinen in Vancouver, and we brought it back the exact same, people showing up to Rogers Arena with pitchforks, maybe throwing a couple bricks through the window,
But that's the thing, Jim Benning would not that's as much as we give him heat, Jim would not run that back.
Yeah,
he might.
That's why I say put
the one thing.
But
the one thing that has really been borne out to me lately with the World Juniors going on in Edmonton, and it's bothered me for a long time, but now it's just really bad, is the Oilers' goal horn is the worst in the NHL by a mile. I don't know what it is, that weird high-pitched horn they have. It drives me up the freaking wall. I hate it so much.
Worse than the cannon?
It's a cannon. It's fine. It's not a bad, like, ear-piercing noise. Who cares about the cannon?
Are we talking about the Oilers goal horn? I tuned out for a second.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah, Oilers.
Oh yeah, that's the worst goal horn in the entire NHL.
See, it's not even close.
Is the Vancouver goal horn, like, because it was sponsored by BC Ferries for a while, and it was identical, like it was the identical tone to the BC Ferries horn. Is it still that same tone here in Vancouver? It's been so long since I've actually heard it. So
it hasn't.
It sounds like a ferry.
I think so too. Yeah. If you look under the jumbotron, the BC Ferries logo is still underneath it.
Is it still there?
Well, no. It says KPMG now. It's KPMG.
Oh, does it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's been a long time.
There's no way the Canucks
would
leave an old logo up like that unless it was Orca Bay. At which point, Orca Bay is perfectly good. Those seats will outlive us all. But no, I feel like the lower horns, like the real low rumbles, those are the best for me.
This is weird. Like, I'm so petty about this stuff, but I can't tell the difference between goal horns, I don't think.
That's insane. And watch the Team Canada highlights from today. Watch them from today. You'll hear the goal horn. You'll be like, oh, yeah, that's the worst thing I've ever heard. And you'll never unhear it again.
I mean, I've seen the goals. I really didn't take notice in the bubble. I'm sorry. I will go do my homework.
In the bubble, they had it team specific, so it was fine.
Oh, okay.
As we sort of move off the horn talk, let's talk about Utica because they've got roommates this season. Vancouver Canucks are sharing the Utica comments with the St. Louis Blues, which is interesting because it's going to be a whole lot easier for the St. Louis Blues to get their players from Utica than it'll be for the Vancouver Canucks to get, call-ups to Canada. One, that's because the AHL doesn't have all teams participating in their modified season. But two, it makes for an interesting situation from a development perspective. I know the Vancouver Canucks, I think it was with Milwaukee, where they shared, was it Milwaukee or Syracuse? They shared with another team. I want to say it was like the Chicago Blackhawks, or maybe it was the Wolves early on. But like, there has to be an agreement on paper that says these players get time regardless, and these players do. Like, how do you manage that?
I don't know. One thing I would say is that I think for the most part we consider Utica Comets a separate entity to the Canucks this year. Like, the taxi squad is for call-ups and the Comets is for development for the most part. So it doesn't seem to be the best thing for development to split your team in half, but desperate times, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I don't actually care about this as much as you'd think I would, but all that matters to me is that the Canucks prospects get their fair share of development time, and that's all I ask. Klim Kostin, meet the bench.
But if you're St. Louis, you're obvious. I mean, they're not negotiating from a position of strength, granted, but there's no way in heck they're happy with the complete loss of development on their end. Like, they'll want their players to receive an opportunity to play in crucial situations, and it's just surreal. I mean, in reality, again, this just goes back to us talking about the NHL schedule. It is just so surreal how this will all work out. In fact, we think about the taxi squad. You're right, Anna. The Canucks are probably going to have a taxi squad and a development team in Utica, but you have 4 Canadian teams who have their franchise, farm teams in Canada, where for them, they're like, oh, heck, very easy. We'll just bring them in. In fact, like, Winnipeg has theirs in Winnipeg, Toronto's in Toronto, Montreal's Laval, and then Ottawa is... Who's Ottawa?
Binghamton.
Oh, yeah.
Is Ottawa Bingham? Okay, so then they're not in Canada. I thought the 4 Eastern franchises had in Canada. Anyhow, the point being is that if the Canucks needed to bring someone in from Utica, there's a rigmarole they have to go through. If the Winnipeg need to call a player up from the Moose, he just shows up at the rink. Like, there's what type of quarantine is even needed at that point?
Yeah, I mean, it forces the issue, right? That we've been debating for years, whether Canucks need a more local farm team. And it's so hard to take a team away from a market like Utica, which is so good. But but it's always been an issue, and this just kind of forces the issue, and maybe it's time to reevaluate, but there's nothing we can do about it now, so have to make do.
Fair enough. Well, and it's not so much even that, like, Stockton for the Flames, the Stockton Heat, there's still a border issue that comes into play coming from the United States into Canada, and it's the same problem that the Canucks face, but at least there's likely easy means to go from Stockton to Calgary without having to take 20 different flights on a Greyhound bus. So, anywho, anything else that we should hit on before we look to wrap this show up?
Just going back to World Juniors really quickly, we just didn't talk about Arvid Kostmar. I don't know how to say it.
Yeah.
He had a really good tournament. He, named one of the players of the tournament for Sweden. Is pretty great honor when guys like Lucas Raymond are on the team, right? So just a good tournament for a 7th round pick. Again, don't read too much into it, but for a 7th round pick, it's nice to see, and maybe hopefully becomes a player of some kind for the Canucks down the road.
If I recall correctly, and Adam, you can correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like Arvid Kostmar wasn't even initially on the Sweden team, and there were a couple like COVID positives that led him to being named on the team.
You know what? I'm not sure. Couldn't answer that for you.
Yeah. Either way, like 7th round pick, there were a lot of times when I was watching him play where I was like, this guy's Alex Burrows. Like, he's not just wearing 14. Like, he's getting under the skin of some of these players. So, I thought that was interesting. I'm curious to see how he develops over the next couple of years.
Man, your expectations are much lower than Canucks Twitter. They have him as Wayne Gretzky.
We're not watching Dale Weeks here.
Well, I mean, true. Dutch Gretzky, he was at a level, above all. Oh, so Happy New Year. We've made our first show of 2021, an interesting one. We talked over each other, all 4 of us. I don't know if it was so much Adam, interrupting the flow the 3 of us had, Matt's internet not being so hot, the fact that we're actually talking about Canucks hockey because Canucks hockey is a thing, or maybe all 4 of us showed up to podcast out of shape. I don't know, but it's in the bag. What final words of wisdom do the 4 or 3 of you, including me 4, have to share with all the listeners? Adam.
Oh, man. Putting me on the spot, Chris. Not much. Just happy to be back to start the new year, and I hope everyone has a great 2021.
Mr. Josh Green?
Yeah, I'm just really excited to have the Canucks back. This season's going to come up real fast. We're only 8 days away, so it's going to sneak up on us really quickly, and I'm just really excited to have something to watch again. I remember, I think I texted this to Adam, like Game 7, Las Vegas. My sitting heart rate was at like 110 at one point, so I want to get that feeling back, and I'm looking forward to watching meaningful hockey again.
Yeah.
Anna?
Yeah. Well, I think maybe we need to do all of our podcasts Lick It Up scene, because that seemed to work well last time with the flow. So maybe we should just bring that back. But yeah, I'm excited for Canucks hockey to come back. We'll hopefully have a bit more information when we talk next time about how the Canucks look, how people are performing in camp, and whether Jake has exceeded expectations, because you might say we pick on him, but just believe me, if it turns out he has an amazing camp and he cements that spot on the second line and blows away all our expectations, we will be so happy.
I just can't believe our next show will be released the day before the Vancouver Canucks are taking on the Edmonton Oilers to kick off the 2021 season.
And we're not going to hear that goal horn once.
I was just going to say, I can't wait to have that going off in Adam's ear.
I'm going to post that in Discord just so Anna can hear it.
Okay, great.
There's got to be a YouTube channel for NHL goal horns that has every single one of them, and then probably ranked. Anywho, one final request for anyone still listening to this episode. You need to go and click the subscribe button on our YouTube channel. Why? Because until such time as we get to 100 subscribers, we can't give you a short link, which means Matt can't find our very own channel. It's too difficult for him. So how do you go and find the C4 YouTube channel? Well, unlike, myself or Matt, who has to go and find that crazy link, which I'm not going to go and read the letters out because unfortunately it's just going to be too difficult. All you need to do is go to bit.ly, so bit.ly/100-4C4. That's 100-FORC4. And FORC is all caps because bit.ly does that. That will take you to the YouTube page. Click the subscribe link. Get us to 100, because once we do, then we could be like youtube.com/C4 podcast, which would just be the greatest thing ever. Also, on that note, if you would prefer to listen to the podcast on YouTube, I am now pushing our episodes there. They are slower than all other podcatchers, but that does mean they go to YouTube. Why that might be cool is because maybe you use some Google Home device like Matt does. He unplugs it so he can record this show. But you can listen to the podcast there. We're wrapping things up. We'll be back next week. We're back to weekly, I think. It would be a shame that we come back after the Canucks have played a few games. Adam may come back again. Who knows? I think there are still some in C4 Discord which think Adam is, not real. He is simply the AI manifestation of Matt. And if you are curious about C4 Discord, discord.io/C4 podcast, join the conversation. Have some good times. Watch Jay and Sean get into it over, I don't know, numbers, the sky being blue. It's all in good fun, right? So on behalf of Anna at 84603, Adam at AdamFOC, Matt at Matt Lee _61, and myself, Chris at Lightforce, we out.